My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater for the 23rd of January, 2019. I know I normally go live right now. Unfortunately, I have a previous appointment, so this is a world premiere video. Don't worry though, all the same kick-ass movie coverage, just not me being right there with you in the moment. But don't worry, I will be back definitely beginning of next week being alive. The end of the week, again, things are going to be a little bit crazy, so expect more of these premieres. I just want to be upfront with you guys about what's going on. And remember, you guys can always call in or send voicemails to our podcast line, which would be $3bucktheater@gmail.com. You can give us a call at 818-350-3281. That's 818-350-3281. And I will be answering an email at the end of the episode. As you can see here, we got some Nick Cage on the screen because he's got something crazy going on. And of course, it's the middle of the week. You know, it's been a good, fun week. So let's get into the news here. So Sandra Bullock is back, as we knew she would be, as we knew the success of Bird Box was going to definitely give her another challenge, at least this time, probably with Netflix, because let's face it, if something is successful on streaming, it's going to probably do well on its own. Now, it says here, Netflix to produce sci-fi movie Reborn, obviously starring Sandra Bullock. Bullock is reteaming with Netflix to produce a science fiction movie Reborn for the streaming service. Chris McKay has been signed to direct the comic book adaptation. It producer Vertigo Entertainment is on board to produce. Bullock starred in the Netflix movie Bird Box, which has been viewed more than 80 million times, according to the streaming giant. Now think about that. They liked it so much. Bird Box was definitely a hit. So they went back to her and they were like, hey, we have this other idea. How would you feel about this? And Bullock, who is an award-winning actress, a household name, a top-tier talent, is on board for another streaming movie. Why do you think that is? Because it's not only just a payday, it keeps her absolutely relevant. More people are going to see her in this movie, and she's going to get paid a lot of cash to be in it. So why not do it? Bird Box was a movie that kind of came out of nowhere and ultimately went on to, well, get to the point of where YouTube has now banned a lot of pranks because of Bird Box and the Bird Box Challenge. So it's kind of a cultural thing. She probably wants to try to do that again. Now, Reborn here, and this is where it gets interesting, is written by Mark Milar and Greg Capullo, and it centers on an elderly woman who dies in Manhattan Hospital only to find herself reborn in the afterlife world of Adsteria, where good and evil are waging an eternal war amid dragons. She then sets off on a quest to find her late husband. So what you have to realize about this right off the bat is Mark Millar is the guy who created Kick-Ass and Wanted and Kingsman. And Millar World sold to Netflix, I want to say about a year and a half ago, for an undisclosed sum. We don't quite know what the deals of the arrangement were, but this kind of feels like it's going to be the first project in development that I know of. There could be other ones that I don't know of that are already in the works in Netflix, but this seems like it's the first one. And so Sandra Bullock teaming up to be in a movie written by Mark Millar, talking about basically what it's, well, I mean, let's be realistic here. What exactly is Reborn going to be? It's a mixture of different themes and different genres. What you have is a little bit of maybe, I don't know, San Junipero from Black Mirror, where people go into a digital world, although here is considered the afterlife world. And she's got to go find her late husband. Well, what does that remind you of? Well, go back to the 1990s to the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come, where he dies after then his wife commits suicide. He has to then travel into kind of like the underworld in order to rescue her soul. And that's a whole thing with that. So it's kind of a mixture of that. Kind of feels a little bit of a play on mystical fantasy type stuff. If we're going to kind of put it into maybe relative current ideas, I would say go back to one of the segments, like the medieval segment of Sucker Punch. That was more like knights and dragons storming a castle in a weird fantasy setting of Zack Snyder's creation. And that's kind of all a mix in this particular film, but written by Mark Millar. So I'm already on board with whatever this is. I'm not a huge fan of the name Adistria. I don't know. They're going to tell us how to pronounce it. Now, it says here that Reborn has not yet been cast, but Bullock will produce along with Roy Lee and Mary Yoon for Vertigo. Millar and Capullo will also be executive producers. And it says Chris McKay directed the Lego Batman movie and is an executive producer on the Lego Movie Part 2. So this is his first live action film. But he was supposed to be the guy behind Nightwing. and also Dungeons and Dragons, which goes to show you that where those two particular projects are at. He was, you know, remember when Lego Batman came out and they're like, Chris McKay's going to go do Nightwing. And everyone's like, oh my God, Nightwing movie. Okay, cool, you know, and that never happened. And then they said, oh no, he's in talks with 20th Century Fox to go and do Dungeons and Dragons. And everyone's like, what about Nightwing? I want to know more about that. And yeah, nothing really happened. Nothing really happened as a result of that. So that's unfortunate for him. But this is a Netflix produced film, so it's going to happen. They've got the money to spend on it. And I don't know. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's going to be pretty fun. Mark Millar is a great writer. He's a great world builder. Sandra Bullock is probably going to star in this because why else would she be on board to executive produce it if not to star in it? They just don't want to say anything just yet, but they're definitely using her to sell this to see what the response is from the industry. I think the industry is going to be on board. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with REBORN, but it seems like a cool kind of comic book idea that is going to be given the budget, the time, and the care that really only Netflix can give. And that makes me very happy because, again, Bright was kind of a similar comic book-esque take on certain things that Max Landis put out from David Ayer directing, and it was a great movie. I really liked it, and I really am looking forward to seeing whatever they do with Bright 2 whenever the hell that thing ever comes out. But in a post-Me Too world, who knows if that's just going to sit on the back shelf. Now, let's talk about Nicolas Cage doing a weird movie. Let's talk about Nicolas Cage doing a very, very, very weird movie, because that's basically where we are with this right here. Nicolas Cage to star in horror movie Color Out of Space. Now, I don't know anything about this, but apparently it's based off of, well, we'll find out here in a second, but something that's going to make horror fans very, very happy. Saying here, Nicolas Cage will star in the horror movie Color Out of Space for Elijah Wood's SpectreVision. Principal photography will begin next month, with South African filmmaker Richard Stanley directing his first feature film in 20 years. Stanley co-wrote the script with Scarlett Amaris. The project, based on a novella by H.P. Lovecraft, will reunite Cage with SpectreVision, the company behind his 2018 film Mandy. The cast also includes Jolie Richardson, Tommy Chong, Elliot Knight, Julian Hillard, and, oh God, Kieran Kilcher. I'm terrible with names. I feel bad for mispronouncing that. So what we have here is an H.P. Lovecraft novella starring Nicolas Cage, produced by the same people behind Mandy. If that doesn't make you a little bit hard, if that doesn't get your nips to the point where they can cut glass, I don't know what will if you are a horror fan. Because Mandy was wild. It was crazy. And I think going into that route and approaching it from a Lovecraft perspective, for one, Lovecraft is very, very, very hard to translate to film. It is. It's very hard to translate the film, so it's going to be, I don't know how they're going to pull it off, but we'll have to wait and see. Elijah Wood, you know, his company put it together, and I think he's got an eye for talent, so we'll have to see what there. But it says here that The Color Out of Space centers on a family who moves to a remote farmstead in rural New England to escape the hustle of the 21st century when a meteorite crashes into their front yard, resulting in the land and the properties of space and time being infected with a strange, otherworldly color. To their horror, the family discovers that this alien force is gradually mutating every life form that it touches. So while it's not Cthulhu-based or the Elder Gods-based, it is definitely going to be something that's going to be wild and trippy. I mean, if I had to kind of equate it to maybe a more of a recent film, just the description from this leads me to think back to the ending sequence of 10 Cloverfield Lane, when Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character was running outside of the farm and then seeing the alien ship and the alien gas and the alien creatures, and also maybe a little bit of Annihilation in there, right? Where there's the alien biodome sort of thing, right? Down that they got to go investigate. So that to me is interesting. With Nicolas Cage on board to star in it. So with the success of Mandy being as crazy as it was, with the success of all of that being how it was, I am pretty certain that that Nick Cage is going to totally be on board for this thing and is going to go completely wild, because Nick Cage, in my opinion, will go down certain trends if they are well received by fans. If, you know, when you want to see him go nuts, he'll go nuts, and I think he'll be very happy to do it. He likes to play those type of characters up, and those are the ones that fans seem to remember the most and the fans have the most reverence for. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on with this one. But when it comes out, I think a lot of people are going to probably be very, very happy. Now, Daredevil is a sore spot. when it comes to fans of the MCU, right? People love Daredevil. I love Daredevil. I am still bummed that the show was canceled. I'm still upset that the show was canceled. I'm almost done with season 2 of The Punisher, and I just keep hoping for some Matt Murdock pop up. I keep hoping for some Daredevil reference or something that ties it in, that keeps these characters alive in some fashion. And outside of the Karen Page thing, I already know she's in the season. That's already been said multiple times. So it's not a spoiler, but still, you know, the way Daredevil season 3 ended, it left it on a good high note. So yes, it can end there fine. But at the same time, you know, I really want there to be more. Now, Charlie Cox is desperate to stay on this role, saying here that the surprise cancellation of Daredevil prompted fans to launch a petition in hopes of convincing Netflix to revive the series. Efforts to save the show have gained support from stars of the series, and Charlie Cox revealed that he anonymously signed the aforementioned petition, stating that he hopes Daredevil can continue at some point, saying, "I hope that maybe something can happen in the future that might allow us to continue to make the show, but you can't hang your head on that because you just don't know." Now, a lot of people out there have said, "Oh yeah, I love the show, but it's done." They're just definitively saying that it's dead. They're definitively saying that Daredevil is dead. The show is done, that they'll bring it back, but they're going to recast it. You know what? I think with enough fan pressure, and I mean keeping the pressure on, and I've talked about that openly, keeping the pressure on would go a long way to helping the fans continue to keep this thing alive. And I think that might actually ultimately end up saving the show. Companies like this will respond to fan pressure, but it's got to be constant. It's got to be constant. You know, this isn't like a James Gunn situation where it's like, as much as we want him to be rehired and people are literally paying for billboards in Los Angeles near Disney in order to, you know, keep the dream alive, so to speak. This has a better shot of coming back. Now, Charlie Cox does go on here to say that he would love to continue playing the character in any MCU project, right? Any MCU project, saying, "Dude, I'd like anything. In the comic books, there's some fantastic Spider-Man, Daredevil storylines. The bottom line is I absolutely love the show. I love playing the character. It's still a bit weird for me that I'm not playing the character anymore. It's kind of impossible for me to really imagine that a Spider-Man Daredevil team up because it's been such a long period of my life. It's such a dream job for me. It's been such a wonderful experience that any scenario where I get to continue playing the character, whether it be on a different series or whether it be in the movies, would be fantastic. I can only hope." It's almost like I can't think about it because I don't want to get my hopes up. And when he says that, you know he's being legit. Like, if you've seen any of Charlie Cox's interviews talking about Daredevil and the cancellation and his love of the show, you know he's being genuine. There was a very short-lived show on AMC called Geeking Out with Kevin Smith and Greg Gunberg. And there was an episode, I think it was like episode 3, right before the release of The Defenders, where they went to New York and he interviewed Charlie Cox and talked about Daredevil, and Cox was hype about it. He was all in on it. And this matched with Kevin Smith's own enthusiasm in regards to the character, because he wrote the Man Without Fear graphic novel. And it was just like this, there was synergy there, but it was electricity. It was very good, very great. And probably my all-time favorite Charlie Cox interview, because I just loved the emotion he put out there selling this character because he loves it. And I know that the people at Marvel know he loves it, and I don't know how to try to, you know, champion this thing through right now with the way that the MCU is in regards to the to the Fox buyout, and whether or not the vertical of Fox and Walt Disney Company, if they're going to do more mature products over on Fox and they don't want to tie it directly into the MCU, if they're going to treat it like an MCU Dark series that is tangentially connected but not part of the main overarching storyline, which would be fine, you know, as long as it's under the same roof. I feel we're going to get these things because they do with the Scarlet Witch series, the Loki series, the Winter Soldier and Falcon series. Like, they are doing certain things, and they are going to diversify. They've already been diversifying with television. I mean, you've got Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Humans and Agent Carter all on ABC, and then you've got Runaways on Hulu and Cloak and Dagger on Freeform. There are diversifications for it, and there are different avenues to put these particular projects in order to, well, find an audience. And so I do hope that they find a way. And whatever I can do, if you are working on something and you need me to pimp it, I will fucking pimp it, right? Like, this is the thing I want to do. This is the thing I believe in and I want to see continue. I've grown very attached to these characters. I care about these characters, as weird as it is to say out loud, and I want to make sure that they continue. I want to continuously see them, very much grow and very much expand and continue being around all of the characters in Daredevil. And Luke Cage and Iron Fist and Jessica Jones, because that's inevitably going to be canceled as well. Although we are almost a week past the release of Punisher Season 2, so they haven't said cancellation yet, so we don't quite know. There was an interview with the showrunner of Punisher Season 2 who said that for Season 3, if they get a Season 3, he wants to bring in Daredevil and Kingpin and make it a team-up show. That way, listen, who do I have to blow to make that happen? You know what I mean? Like, who do I have to blow to make that happen? That's the reality that I want to live in. Now let's jump over here to a series I like to do, and I haven't done in a while, but I like to do this. It's called RT Recap. And right now, as you can see, I'm on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm looking at the page for The Kid Who Would Be King. Now, if you don't know what the RT Recap is, what I'd like to do is take a look at when the reviews drop for a new movie. And even though I've always said that Rotten Tomatoes is very much kind of, don't always trust it. It's take it with a grain of salt sort of thing. A lot of people tend to come to this website and treat it as the God's truth. Treat it as this is the de facto feelings for the film, and this is where it should be treated. And I like to break it down from my perspective, looking at the top critical responses and analyze what they're saying about it in order to maybe get a better, more fundamental understanding of the movie before you go and see it. More of a review of the reviews, so to speak. Now, right now it's sitting at 87% with 45 fresh reviews and 7 rotten, with a critical consensus saying The Kid Who Would Be King recalls classic all-ages adventures and repurposes a timeless legend for a thoroughly enjoyable new addition to the family movie canon. And that's what I've been hearing a lot about this from people's reactions on Twitter and things like that. The movie itself looks pretty damn good, and I'm actually wanting to go see it this weekend if I possibly can. Now, it says here that the story centers around old school magic meets modern world in the epic adventure The Kid Who Would Be King. Alex thinks he's just another nobody until he stumbles upon the mythical sword in the stone, Excalibur. Now he must unite his friends and enemies into a band of knights, and together with the legendary wizard Merlin, take on the wicked enchantress Morgana. With the future at stake, Alex must become the great leader he never dreamed he could be. And it's clearly the a kid's take on it, but it looks like it's a lot of fun. It's written and directed by Joe Cornish. Cornish did Attack the Block, which was just awesome movie. If you never saw Attack the Block, he also co-wrote Adventures of Tintin back in 2011 with Edgar Wright, and we still need sequels for those, but the dude's pretty solid, and he's bringing back some 80s goodness, which Attack the Block also felt like 80s alien invasion movie goodness. Now, let's take a look here at just the top critic reviews for The Kid Who Would Be King. So Pat Padua here from Washington Post says, do Middle Ages hold the key to saving the world? The Kid Who Would Be King suggests so. All right, well, that's not much of a summary. I guess it's just, does this movie stand up to, does it stand up for what it's trying to do? Or does it accomplish what it's trying to do? Yes, that's why I take that one. Carrie Darling here from Houston Chronicle says, with a fresh review, it's often quite funny. The effects are satisfying, if not out of this world, and the message that we should all ally with whom we disagree to defeat the larger evils in this world is meant as much for adults as kids, but it's never too heavy-handed. Now, always when it comes to these kind of movies, you want to have something there for the adults, and I think, hey, look, preaching a message of unity across the political aisle, across the political divide, people you disagree with, to fight for the greater good is a good message to send, and one that I think parents need to remember, especially when it comes to Thanksgiving dinner and politics come up. Brian Truitt from USA Today says, The Kid Who Would Be King revitalizes the Arthurian legend for a new generation of film fans with a family-friendly story as sharp as Excalibur's blades, basically giving it, saying that it's pretty sharp, good story, and it works. Katie Walsh, says Cornish crafts a King Arthur movie that draws in a younger crowd, reinterprets a tale for a modern age, and speaks consciously to the current political climate. That's quite the feat. And again, really touching upon the let's all join forces and let's take down the evils of the world. And no, it's not going to probably be aimed at as it being anti-Trump or anything like that, but larger problems, larger issues, climate change, poverty, unemployment, things like that is what I would like to think that he's going for here, but I don't know the writers. I don't know Cornish's personal politics. Lindsay Barr from the AP says, it's surprisingly delightful film full of action, heart, crazy-haired Patrick Stewart as old Merlin, villain, and a few genuinely good gags. It really couldn't have come at a better time. So again, at a time when we want more kind of fun, flighty, fanciful movies that we can enjoy, everyone can enjoy. Because remember back in the 90s, we had all these movies that were like fun for the whole family. Like literally fun for the whole family, right? Like look at, I'm just going to say Princess Bride, for example. Princess Bride is a movie I watched religiously as a child. I watched religiously as a kid. My buddy and I would rent that movie all the damn time, love it even to this day. And as an adult, I look forward to showing it to my kid because it transcends time. You know, it transcends all of the nonsense to tell a fun story that's infinitely rewatchable. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting out of this. Maybe not infinitely rewatchable, but definitely one that is going to kind of aim for what The Princess Bride was, and maybe come close to hitting it. Now, Dana Schwartz from Entertainment Weekly here says, the script is good-natured, action-packed, and attempts to delve in the thematic territory beyond what might be normally expected from a kid's movie. And I like that too, where it doesn't treat everyone like they're stupid. That's one of the biggest problems with these large tentpole films, is that the scripts are so diluted and they're aimed for a general audience and easily translatable across the globe that it takes everyone for granted. It treats everyone like they're stupid. There's a reason why you go, man, that person would never say that. Why would they say something so stupid? Why would they do that thing that's so stupid? Because they're trying to play to a worldwide audience that has a language barrier. Yeah, it's ridiculous because they remove nuance and subtlety and they take away what people are capable of comprehending and understanding. Now, Sandy Angulo Chen says, Goonies meets Lord of the Rings and a fun but sometimes scary adventure. I think that kind of explains itself. Blake Gobble here says, Joe Cornish is a genre geek behind Attack the Block, ably relishes the film's goofy ideas and good-natured quirk. Again, I mentioned Attack the Block as being this excellent movie. It really was. So again, that kind of sells me on it. Sean P. Means says, Cornish definitely mixes exciting action sequences, some scary CGI creatures, and a sense of humor that the kids will enjoy, and is dry enough to amuse their parents, whose knowledge of Arthurian legend begins and ends with Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of sight gags. And there's probably going to be a lot of little jokes in there that aren't aimed at the kids, that are aimed at the adults and things along those lines. And that's going to be very much aiming to be more towards Monty Python take on the Holy Grail in that particular storyline than anything else. And that actually makes me more excited to see the movie, because anything that's somewhat tangentially related to the Holy Grail in a positive is always a good thing. I think I'm not alone on that front. I think you guys are going to agree with me on this one. Now it says, Robin Clifford here says, the noisy seen it before finale turns a kid who will be king into something a little less than it could be. They had me for 3/4 of the movie. And again, I think we run into a problem with a lot of movies these days of how to end. How to write a finale is not something they really teach you when it comes to writing school. They don't. They go, here's a strong opening, hook the audience. Well, then how do you keep them going to the end? You got to put a little bit of something else extra in there. And a lot of times these movies in the finale kind of do fall apart in the third act. We hear about that pretty often. So it's kind of a common thing, but it's also probably very predictable. If you know the Arthurian tale, you know how it's going to end, all that stuff. But again, it's aimed at kids, and that's who the primary demographic is. So Robin here is just, he's a boomer, but I get it. Norman Wilner here from Now Toronto says, the movie's target demographic won't be bothered. They'll be delighted by the heroics, the adventuring, and the nifty, quirky physicality in which Emery and Stewart perform Merlin's magic tricks. And maybe that's as it should be. Again, giving a movie for the kids, just for the kids. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad with that whatsoever. And I feel we've moved past a lot of that, or maybe I've just gotten older, and for me, it's totally different now. For me, it's just a totally different experience where I look at it and I'm just like, I don't know. Right. Like I remember like when I was taking my brother and sister to see movies like Snow Day, when that came out, Nickelodeon putting out Harriet the Spy, movies like that. But then again, we have movies like Goosebumps that are aimed for that younger demographic as well. And maybe I'm just not seeing them. Captain Underpants is a thing. Maybe I'm just getting a little bit too old. And once my daughter becomes of age, I'll be able to see those movies again, because they'll actually be on my horizon versus something I had to see a poster for and then forget 2 seconds later. Now, finally here, Kelly Vance from East Bay Express says, the kid who would be king is an amiable young person's fantasy that adults will probably relate to more than kids. Brexit analogies and all. Okay, so it does go a little bit on the politics side involving British politics, which Americans aren't going to fully understand the complexities of Brexit, nor, will they ever fully get the complexities of it. But that's okay. That's okay. The movie ultimately seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. The reviews are all positive. The reviews are basically saying like it's go in there expecting what you're going to get. You'll be delighted along the way. Your kids are going to have a good time, and there's enough humor there aimed at the adults that they're going to be able to walk out going, okay, that was okay, and maybe they'll watch it again with their kids on home video down the road. And I think that is kind of the perfect way to approach something along the lines of a concept like this. To tell an Arthurian tale, but aimed for a younger audience. It kind of feels like, if I'm being fair, I saw the trailer for this and I thought this was like the next Percy Jackson series. I thought this was based on a young adult novel that they're just, adapting for film. And here's the deal. If people think that too, if I'm not the only one who thought that, people think there's going to be a sequel and the movie does really well, there could be. Although I don't know where they would take it because I haven't seen the movie yet, but hopefully we all will this weekend. So finally, let's talk about a situation that was brewing a couple days ago on Twitter. I watched it kind of play itself out and I wanted to bring it up, but it was already an overstacked deck full of content to talk about on the podcast today. But there's a show called 80's All Over, and it's run by Drew McWeeny, formerly of Ain't It Cool News. He was Moriarty, and then he was over at HitFix as Drew McWeeny. He's a reviewer. He covers movies and stuff. And then also Scott Weinberg, who is another film critic who I don't particularly like. He doesn't like me either, but that's just where it's at. And they do a podcast called 80's All Over. And 80's All Over goes through once a week, movies released per month, per year, starting in 1980 and working their way up. Every 3 months goes past a new year. And they were working on getting close to the 1989, coming to the end of their podcast, when they came across a show produced by Cinemasins called Movies Going on 30, which starts talking about films released in 1989 and going into the 90s, so on and so forth, talking about the different films. Now, Drew McWeeny went out and accused them of theft, outright accused Cinemasins as theft. And that got a lot of people talking about it. A lot of Drew's fans got pissed off. And that got the people from Movies Going on 30 to issue a statement. And this is their statement. I want to talk about this. So he says here, I woke to accusations that Cinemasins had plagiarized somebody else's podcast. A podcast called 80's All Over thinks our new Movies Going on 30 podcast is stealing their format. They issued a tweet asking people to let us know, and they did. Fun times. Here's the thing with that, though. When Twitter gets real riled up and you're the target of that, it's not fun at all. I've never listened to 80's All Over before today. Now I have. I find it to be a great show made by clear film lovers. You should listen to it. Drew and Scott seem like good guys, and I regret that they hate us. But we're not ripping off that show. Both shows are movie retrospectives. That's the end of the sameness. The content is driven by the host, not the fact that both shows are talking about older movies from a similar era. In fact, our main podcast, The Sincast, began doing deep dive year-by-year retrospectives on film in April of 2016. We called it the best of the years we've been alive, and we started with 1975, my birth year. We did a full 10 episodes on 80s movies, which is nearly 2 hours long, covering films of the 80s that were critical successes and box office successes or ultimately became cult classics. Every episode, including audio from the movies and trailers, we finished that 80s runs with an episode on 1989 in July of 2016, a few weeks before 80's All Over even existed as a podcast. For the record, we don't think their show plagiarized us in any way. As a content as film retrospective that is driven by host personalities, we also doubt that we were the first to go year by year covering movies on a podcast. That said, we'd love to open a dialogue with 80's All Over guys about their concerns and how we can work through them. We look forward to that discussion. We are, in the meantime, going to continue our new show. And that is, quite frankly, the best answer they can give. Now, I understand Drew's perspective. I've met Drew at Comic-Con, I think it was 2016. We were talking in Hall H, in between panels, and got to know each other a little bit. We're not friends or anything, but I don't think he's a bad guy. But I follow him on Twitter, and he gets really, really, really worked up over a lot of things. Like, often. It's hard to follow him sometimes because you're like, you want to like say something back to him when he's factually wrong, but it's really not worth the hassle, as is most Twitter interactions these days, I feel like. But at the same time, watching this thing go down as a content creator on YouTube who covers movie content on YouTube, I'm completely on the side of Cinemasins here. Everything is host personality driven. Okay. How many times do you hear? Okay. Let's just talk about this whole Leslie Jones Ghostbuster situation. How many people do you know covered that topic this week? A lot. How many videos did you watch on that this week? I know I watched a lot. Do you know why? Because I want to get other people's perspectives, not just my own. I want to see what other people are saying. That's why I tune in. That's why I'll listen to like different people talk about the same subject, because it's not that they're all derivative of one another, that they're all stealing from one another. It's that they're all host driven and the content is all there to be host driven and personality driven. And that is where you get the takes, and people then come for the personalities. This is how online entertainment works. People come and subscribe to my channel. You guys are watching this podcast because you like what I have to say, or you stumbled across it. You're really bored. You can't find the remote to turn it off. For that case, I apologize for nothing, but still. But you know, it's all personality driven. That's all it is. So to come out and attack them, I find to be is just really petty, to be fair. I get where they're coming from, but you know what? Here's the thing is I started doing a gaming news podcast back in 2007, February 2007, the exact same week that Kevin Smith started doing Smodcast. Now the two are not related, but I can't sit there and go, Kevin Smith started podcasting same week I started, he ripped me off. He doesn't know who I am. I didn't even know about Smodcast until it was a couple weeks in. You know, and that, of course, turned into Smodcast Internet Radio, which lasted for a little bit, which was then completely personality driven. And now he's doing other shows that are completely personality driven. People want his take on things. I'm just saying that over the span of the last, you know, almost decade and a half, people have been making podcasts or doing live streams here on YouTube where it's all personality driven. We may all not agree on things. We may disagree on many things. But to try to sit there and say that we're ripping each other off, I think is just, it's disingenuous. And I believe it does more to harm the situation rather than to foster an open dialogue. Drew and Scott should go ahead and take up Cinemasins on their offer, if for nothing else, and they are a much larger audience than they are. They are a much larger fan base than they have. And why not find a way to work with them to tap into that shit so then you can get more people listening to your personality-driven content? Right? Anyway, that brings us to the end of the stories I had covered, but I did want to get to one email that I got, so we can definitely answer that. When I got the one email while we were recording yesterday, again, you guys can always send in emails to 3bucktheater@gmail.com or call on a voicemail line at 818-350-3281. That's 818-350-3281. And here's the thing also, just so those of you who are out of the country, or maybe you don't want to call in, but you want to like record a little 30-second voice snippet, you can also email that to me and I can play that on the show too. Something to consider for next time. So we got an email here from Reed, who was in the chat yesterday. I remember him. Nice guy. He says, do you think more companies will look at making video game movies after the success of Detective Pikachu? They've already announced Uncharted. What do you think? Well, here's the thing with that is I would love there to be a good video game movie. A really good video game movie. There's been some that have come close. I feel like, what was it? Silent Hill from 2006 was a solid video game movie. The sequel, not so much. The first Resident Evil was a solid video game movie. The sequels went entirely in a different direction. The first Mortal Kombat movie was a solid movie. The second one, oh my God. I saw that movie stoned as hell when I was 15. I smoked like chronic laced with LSD. I did not know was laced with LSD. Just letting you guys know that completely enhanced the viewing experience. I was like, Mortal Kombat Annihilation is like the best goddamn movie ever. Yeah, motherfucker. Yeah. I was stoned real bad. And then I watched it again on home video and I'm like, this movie sucks. But the original's great, right? I want to see a good Halo movie. I want to see a solid, you know, the Halo live action stuff that they've done on Showtime, like the Nightfall and that other show, or Forward Unto Dawn and then Nightfall, were okay, but they weren't what they could be. They were adequate attempts, but it's so hard to take a concept such as video games and turn it into being a movie, right? Turn it into being a solid retelling. Now, Uncharted, I think, is going to be one of the easier ones to make. Like, you have the game, you've got the script for the game, at least the plot points. Just show us that. But at the same time, I don't even really want that, right? Like, I would rather there be a new Drake adventure, because Uncharted 4 is like playing a really long movie. That's not a bad thing. Great game is fantastic. Excellent story. But to show us that on the big screen, to give us that on the big screen, something I've already gotten is not something I'm interested in. Like, I remember I was at Comic-Con. I want to say maybe it was also 2015. No, sorry. It's Comic-Con 2014. It was Comic-Con 2014, and they had a Screen Gems panel that I didn't know was going to be all about the Last of Us movie, right? That was where they first announced The Last of Us remastered for PS4, which I still need to go replay again for like the 10th time before the new game comes out, because that's probably my favorite game of the last generation. And then, you know, definitely talk about the movie. And Neil Druckmann was writing the script, and Druckmann was talking about how he didn't just want to tell the same story. He wanted to try, you know, he wanted to do something a little bit different. And I'm okay with that, you know, but I think telling the story of Ellie and Joel in the Last of Us movie right off the bat would be great. I think they just tell us that story for the first movie and then open it up to the sequel or spinoffs. But video game movies are kind of like adaptations of novels. They don't really work in book form. Like Ready Player One, it felt like a video game movie because it kind of was, but it's also like a video game book. And the book had a lot more exposition, a lot more things in it, but I felt the movie was a solid adaptation, although I would have preferred it to be more like the book, even with some of the longer scenes that were, you know, Wade by himself forever was like 90% of the book, by the way. And, but then telling us to that in more of a long form narrative, like on Netflix or something. So when I hear about adaptations of these things going to, you know, like Halo going to Showtime as a 10-episode series, that's great for me because that allows us to get the narrative structure that we get through playing a video game. The Witcher going to Netflix is going to be a 10-episode season, or 8 or 10 episodes. I forget which, but like 8 or 10 episodes. And that's going to be one that's going to be fantastic. And that's going to be, well, okay, people are up in arms over certain things about it, but who the creatives behind it, but whatever. But still, it's going to be an adaptation of The Witcher. Not, I don't know which book or whatever, but it's going to be an adaptation of that. It's not going to be an adaptation of The Wild Hunt. Although I do hope they one day adapt The Wild Hunt. It's a 4-year-old game that's still pitch freaking perfect. So a good narrative game can be told. A Call of Duty movie could be told because those single player campaigns are effectively movies anyway. So they can do it, but it requires someone who actually understands the game. I do think that Dan Trachtenberg, having been a former games journalist and a huge game enthusiast, is the perfect person to tackle Uncharted, with Tom Holland to tell us a young Drake story. Do I still want Nathan Fillion in the role? 100%. I very much want that to be where things are, but you know what? You can't get everything that you want, and that's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, it's still happening. So yeah, I think Detective Pikachu is going to be big. I just wish they would push it back, to be honest with you, man. Detective Pikachu is it's opening up like middle of May, a couple weeks after Avengers Endgame. I don't want it to get swallowed like Solo and Deadpool 2 did ultimately. Even though Deadpool 2 went on to make like 740 million worldwide, it wasn't really swallowed up anywhere, but it could have done more, damn it. Same with Solo. So thank you very much for the email. I do really appreciate it. And again, you guys can call in, email 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I do listen to all the calls that come in and read the emails that come in. And I want this to be a larger part of the podcast where not only do we talk about movies, what's going on, but I read emails and answer phone calls and then talk to you guys in the chat when you guys, when we're here. My goal for this is to build this up, man. I love talking movies. I can't thank you guys enough for hanging out with me this week. I'm sorry that I'm not here live with you guys right now. It's, you know, Monday to Friday is definitely what I want to do, but there are going to be days where things are going to kind of not be as what I would like. And I will talk to you guys all tomorrow. Have yourself a fantastic day and peace out.